In the high-pressure world of modern cardiology, there are rules. Arteries harden, hearts weaken, time takes its toll on everyone. But on a rainy Tuesday in Seattle, one man broke every single rule of human biology. His name was Mateo, a humble 90-year-old grandfather from a remote province in the Philippines. When American doctors looked at his scans, they thought the machine was broken. They recalibrated the equipment. They ran the test again and again, but the result was always the same. This 90-year-old man didn't just have a healthy heart. He had the heart of an elite athlete in his 20s. What they found in his blood wasn't a pharmaceutical miracle. It was traces of a simple, forgotten ingredient from his backyard in the Philippines. This is a story of the day Western medicine faced a mystery it couldn't explain, and the secret diet that might just change everything we know about aging. Dr. Sarah Jenkins stood in the observation room of the Seattle Heart Institute, staring at the telemetry monitors with a mix of confusion and irritation. She was one of the top cardiologists in the state, a woman who trusted data above all else. The screens in front of her were displaying the vitals of patient 402, a man admitted for a routine checkup required for his visa renewal. According to the paperwork, Mateo de la Cruz was 92 years old. However, the rhythmic green line tracing across the monitor told a completely different story. It showed a resting heart rate of 48 beats per minute, with a stroke volume and ejection fraction that Sarah typically only saw in Olympic swimmers or marathon runners in their prime. She tapped the glass of the monitor, assuming a glitch in the software. "Nice," she called out, her voice tight. "Check the leads on the patient in 402. You hooked him up to the demo loop again." The nurse, a young man named David, looked up from his station, his face pale. "I didn't, Dr. Jenkins. I've checked them 3 times. I even swapped the machine. That's his real heart rate." Sarah frowned, grabbing the clipboard and marching down the hallway. In her 20 years of practice, she had seen anomalies, but she had never seen a physiological impossibility. A 90-year-old heart should show signs of wear, stiffening of the ventricles, calcium deposits in the arteries, perhaps a little leakage in the valves. It was a natural decay of the human engine, but the data she held in her hand suggested a cardiovascular system that was functioning at peak efficiency, seemingly untouched by the ravages of time. She pushed open the door to room 402, expecting to find a mistake. Perhaps the patient lied about his age. Perhaps they had the wrong man entirely. What she found instead was a small, smiling Filipino man sitting on the edge of the bed, peeling an orange. Lolo, Mateo looked every bit his age on the outside. His face was a map of deep wrinkles, his skin weathered by decades of tropical sun, and his hands were callous and rough, the hands of a man who had worked the soil his entire life. He wore a faded flannel shirt and loose trousers, looking entirely out of place amidst the gleaming chrome and sterile white of the hospital room. When Sarah entered, he looked up and smiled, his eyes disappearing into crescents. "Good morning, Doctora," he said, his voice raspy but warm. Sarah stopped at the foot of the bed, studying him. She cross-referenced the photo ID in the file with the man before her. It was definitely him. Born 1934. Nueva Ecija, Philippines. Mr. De La Cruz, Sarah began, keeping her tone professional. "I'm Dr. Jenkins. We need to run a few more tests. There seems to be a discrepancy with your initial scans." Mateo chuckled softly. "Discrepancy? Is my heart broken, Doctora?" "No," Sarah said, stepping closer and pulling out her stethoscope. "Quite the opposite. Your heart seems impossible." She placed the cold metal disc against his chest. What she heard made her pause. Usually, in geriatric patients, the heart sounds are distant, sometimes muffled by tissue or fluid, often accompanied by the whoosh of a murmur. Mateo's heart sounded like a drum, powerful, distinct, and rhythmically perfect. Lubbed up, lubbed up. It was the sound of a pristine engine. She moved the stethoscope to his back, listening to his lungs. Clear as a bell. No wheezing, no crackles. She checked his carotid arteries. No brute, no sign of blockage. Sarah pulled back, her skepticism warring with awe. "Mr. De La Cruz, have you ever had surgery? Any heart medication? Beta blockers? Statins?" Mateo shook his head vigorously. "No medicine, Doctora. Medicine is expensive. I only eat what the ground gives." Sarah scribbled a note. We're going to need an angiogram. I need to see the arteries themselves. The angiogram was scheduled for that afternoon. In the break room, Sarah's colleagues were already gossiping about the Superman Lolo. Dr. Aries, a specialist in geriatrics, laughed it off. It's probably a genetic anomaly, he said, pouring coffee, or a mistake in the birth certificate. You know how records are in rural provinces back in the 30s. He's probably 70, not 90. Sarah wanted to believe that. It would make sense. But when the images from the catheterization lab came back, the entire department fell silent. The screen showed the coronary arteries of Mateo de la Cruz. In a typical 90-year-old, these vessels would be narrowed, jagged with plaque buildup, looking like old, rusty pipes. Mateo's arteries were wide, smooth, and completely flexible. There was zero calcification. It wasn't just healthy, it was pristine. Dr. Aries dropped his coffee cup. That's not possible, he whispered. That's a vascular system of a teenager. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She wasn't looking at a medical marvel. She was looking at a scientific breakthrough. If they could understand why Mateo's endothelium, the lining of his blood vessels, was so resilient, they could potentially treat heart disease in millions of people. She rushed back to Mateo's room. He was watching a game show on the hospital TV, looking bored. Mateo, she said, pulling a chair right next to his bed, abandoning her usual professional distance. I need you to be honest with me. We looked inside your heart. It's perfect. It shouldn't be. You've lived 90 years. You should have blockage. You should have stiffness. But you don't. Why? Mateo looked at her, confused. I told you, Doctora, I just live. Sarah pressed him. It's not just living. It's what you put in your body. Tell me about your diet. What did you eat in the Philippines? Mateo leaned back, a nostalgic look crossing his face. I am a farmer, he began. In my village, we don't have supermarkets. We don't have fast food. When I was a boy, my father told me that the jungle is a pharmacy. He explained his daily routine. He woke up at 4 a.m. He walked 5 kilometers to the rice fields. But it was his lunch that caught Sarah's attention. He didn't eat heavy meats or processed grains. He described a specific broth he drank every single day, made from a combination of vegetables Sarah had vaguely heard of but never studied. Saluyot, he said, okra, sator, and the leaves of the miracle tree. Sarah frowned. Moringa? Malunggay. Mateo nodded. Yes, but it is how we cook it. We don't boil the life out of it. We mix it with the luyan de lor, the yellow ginger, and a special root from a mountain. Sarah began recording the conversation on her phone. Yellow ginger. Turmeric, she muttered. And this root? Mateo shrugged. We call it bignay in some places, or wild berries, but my grandmother used a root she dug near the river. She said it makes the blood flow like water. Sarah realized this wasn't just about one ingredient. It was a synergy. She ordered a full toxicology and nutritional panel on Mateo's blood. She wanted to see the micronutrient levels. While they waited for the results, the hospital administration caught wind of the situation. The chief of medicine, Dr. Vance, called Sarah into his office. I hear you're wasting resources on a 90-year-old tourist, Vance said, looking over his glasses. 3 MRIs, an angiogram. Who is paying for this? Sarah slammed the file on his desk. Look at the images. Vance, we aren't wasting resources. We are looking at the cure for atherosclerosis. Vance looked at the scans, his skepticism evident. This is a mistake, he grunted. Or is a genetic mutant. You're looking for a fountain of youth in a bowl of soup. Sarah, it's embarrassing. He ordered her to discharge Mateo by the next morning. Sarah was furious. She had less than 24 hours to solve the mystery. She went back to Mateo, who was now packing his small bag. They want me to go, he asked, sensing her distress. I am fine, Doctora. I feel strong. I know you are, Sarah said, but I need to know your secret before you leave. I need to know exactly what was in that broth. Mateo smiled mischievously. My granddaughter is coming to pick me up. She brings me my food. She is downstairs. She has a jar. Sarah's eyes widened. She has the food with her? Hey. Mateo nodded. I told her I cannot eat the hospital mush. It tastes like wet paper. Sarah practically ran to the lobby. She found Mateo's granddaughter, a young woman named Angel, holding a large Tupperware container and a thermos. Angel looked terrified as the doctor approached her. Is Lolo okay? Is he sick? She asked, clutching the bag. He's fine, Sarah assured her. Actually, he's incredible. But I need to ask you about the food you brought him. Your grandfather says it's his medicine. Angel relaxed, laughing nervously. Oh, the Dinengdeng? Or the bluezones? He's very picky. He wants it made exactly how he likes it. No salt, no oil, just water and the fresh ingredients. Sarah asked to see it. Angel opened the thermos. A pungent, earthy steam wafted out. It didn't smell like a gourmet meal. It smelled like wet earth, raw leaves, and potent spices. To Sarah's trained nose, it smelled like concentrated chemistry. Can I have a sample? Sarah asked. I can pay you. Angel looked confused but agreed, pouring a small amount into a coffee cup. Sarah took the sample straight to the hospital lab, bypassing the usual protocol. She had a friend in pathology, a guy named Kenji, who owed her a favor. Run a spectral analysis on this, she told him. I want to know every chemical compound, every antioxidant, every anti-inflammatory marker. Kenji looked at the green sludge. What is this? Swamp water. Just test it, Sarah ordered. While Kenji ran the sample, Sarah returned to Mateo's room. She found him doing squats beside his bed. 90 years old, doing deep squats. To keep the legs strong, he said, not even out of breath. The heart is a pump, doctora, but the legs are the second heart. If the legs stop, the heart works too hard. Sarah watched him, realizing that his diet was only half the equation. His philosophy was the other half. He didn't stress. He didn't rush. He moved constantly but deliberately. Mateo, she asked, what stresses you out? He stopped squatting and thought. Nothing, he said. If the typhoon comes, we rebuild. If the crop fails, we plant again. Stress is poison. It makes the blood sour. Sarah thought about her own life, the coffee, the lack of sleep, the high cortisol levels. She was 45 and felt older than him. The lab results pinged on her tablet. She opened the file. The numbers were staggering. The broth contained levels of quercetin, camphorol, and chlorogenic acid that were off the charts, hundreds of times higher than what you'd find in a kale smoothie or a supplement pill. But there was something else. A unique alkaloid she didn't recognize. She called Kenji. What is this peak here? The unknown alkaloid. Kenji sounded excited. I've been looking it up. It's rare. It's found in a specific variety of wild fern that grows in Southeast Asia, combined with the enzymatic reaction from the fresh turmeric. It acts as a natural vasodilator. Sarah, this stuff is basically nature's nitroglycerine but without the side effects. It keeps the arteries explicitly dilated and prevents plaque from sticking to the walls. It's like Teflon for the blood vessels. Sarah almost dropped the phone. Mateo had been drinking a natural heart-protecting cocktail every day for 80 years. The combination of the specific vegetables and the lack of sodium and processed fats had preserved his vascular system in a state of suspended animation. It wasn't magic. It was biochemistry. But there was a problem. Vance, the chief of medicine, had caught wind of her unauthorized lab use. He stormed into the pathology lab just as Sarah was staring at the data. Dr. Jenkins, he bellowed, I told you to discharge the patient, not run soup experiments. He snatched the printout from her hand. What is this nonsense? Sarah stood her ground. That nonsense is a reason patient 402 has zero calcium score. Look at the anti-inflammatory markers, Vance. They are near zero. His body isn't inflamed. Aging is inflammation. He has stopped the clock. Vance looked at the paper, his frown deepening. He was a man of science, but also a man of ego. Admitting that a peasant soup was better than their billion-dollar drugs was a hard pill to swallow. It's anecdotal, he dismissed. One case study proves nothing. Then let's test it, Sarah challenged. We have a patient in the ICU. Mr. Henderson. Severe angina, waiting for a bypass. Nothing brings his inflammation down. Let me give him this nutritional protocol for 3 days. Van scoffed. You want to treat a critical patient with vegetable broth? You will lose your license. I'll take full responsibility, Sarah said. If it doesn't work, I'll resign. But if we ignore this, we are ignoring the evidence right in front of us. The stakes were incredibly high. Mr. Henderson was a donor to the hospital, a VIP. Experimenting on him was career suicide. But Sarah looked at Mateo's scans again. She knew she was right. Vance hesitated, looking at the glowing health of the 90-year-old Filipino man down the hall. Then back at Sarah. You have 24 hours, he said coldly. If Henderson gets worse, you're done. Sarah rushed to the ICU. She had to convince Mr. Henderson and his family. She explained it not as an experiment, but as a specialized holistic nutrient therapy. Desperate for relief from the crushing chest pain, Henderson agreed. Sarah worked with Angel to prepare a fresh batch of the broth in the hospital kitchen. The smell filled the sterile ICU hallway, turning heads. It was earthy, strong, and alien in this environment of antiseptic. They fed Henderson the broth. It was thick, green, and slimy. He grimaced at the taste. It tastes like grass, he complained. It tastes like life, Angel corrected him gently. Eat it all. Sarah watched the monitors. Obviously, it wouldn't be instant. Biochemistry takes time. But she hoped the potent vasodilators would offer some immediate relief. The first 6 hours were agonizing. Henderson's vitals remained unchanged. Sarah sat by his bedside, watching the clock. She visited Mateo in between checks. You must have patience, Doctora, Mateo told her. The body knows how to heal, you just have to give it the tools. The medicine you give, it fights the body. My food, it helps the body. It was a simple distinction, but it resonated with Sarah. Western medicine was often a war against symptoms. Mateo's approach was a partnership with biology. By the 12th hour, something shifted on Henderson's monitor. His blood pressure, usually stubbornly high despite 3 different medications, began to drop into a safer range. His oxygen saturation climbed from 92% to 98%. By the next morning, the change was undeniable. Mr. Henderson woke up and, for the first time in weeks, didn't reach for his morphine pump immediately. The squeezing, he said, touching his chest. It's less. It feels lighter. Sarah drew his blood. The markers for acute inflammation, C-reactive protein, had dropped by 40%. It was a statistical plummet that shouldn't have been possible in such a short window. Vance came in for rounds, expecting to fire Sarah. Instead, he found Henderson sitting up, eating a bowl of oatmeal, looking pink and oxygenated. Vance looked at the chart, then at Sarah. He didn't say a word. He just nodded slowly, a look of disbelief on his face, and walked out. Sarah let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. News of the miracle recovery spread through the hospital. Suddenly, Mateo wasn't just a curiosity. He was a celebrity. Nurses came to ask him for diet tips. Doctors from other departments came to look at his angiogram. But Mateo remained humble. He didn't understand the fuss. It is just food, he kept saying. Why are you Americans so shocked that food keeps you alive? What do you eat that kills you? It was a poignant question. Sarah realized that the shock wasn't about Mateo's health. It was about how far the modern world had strayed from natural living. We were shocked by health because sickness had become the norm. Mateo was the baseline. They were the anomaly. Sarah sat down with Mateo for a final interview before his discharge. She wanted to document the exact recipe for a medical paper. Tell me the secret ingredient, she said. The root. What exactly is it? Mateo smiled and leaned in close. The root helps, he whispered. But the secret is not just what you eat. It is who you eat with. He explained that in the Philippines, no one eats alone. Food is communal. It is shared. Loneliness, Mateo said, pointing to his chest, that closes the arteries faster than pork fat. When we eat, we laugh. We tell stories. The heart opens. Sarah wrote this down, tears pricking her eyes. The biochemical analysis was real, But the social factor, the community, the lack of isolation, was a catalyst that made the diet work. The video of Mateo leaving the hospital went viral internally before it ever hit the internet. The staff lined the hallway and clapped. He waved, holding his granddaughter's hand, looking like a king. He had come in for a checkup and left having taught the top cardiologists in Seattle a lesson they would never forget. Sarah kept the jar of broth Angel had left her. She sent it to a university lab for further study. The preliminary results suggested that the specific compounds in the Moringa and Saluyot, when fermented in the gut, produce a short-chain fatty acid that actively repaired arterial damage. It was a breakthrough. 6 months later, Sarah published her findings in the American Journal of Cardiology. The article was titled Nutritional Intervention in Geriatric Cardiology, the case of the non-calcified nonagenarian. It didn't mention Mateo by name to protect his privacy, but it detailed the diet, high fiber, specific indigenous greens, zero processed sugar, and a crucial element of communal dining. The medical community was divided. Some called it pseudoscience, others called it the future. But Sarah knew the truth. She had started eating the stew herself. Her own blood pressure had normalized, and she had more energy than she'd had in a decade. However, the story didn't end there. A pharmaceutical company caught wind of the study. They tracked down the specific region in Nueva Ecija where Mateo lived. They wanted to patent the root extract. They sent representatives to the village, offering money for the land, wanting to turn the wild fields into a controlled farm for mass production. Mateo, back in his simple wooden house, sat on his porch when the businessmen in suits arrived. They promised him millions of pesos. They promised to make him rich. They told him his secret could make them all wealthy. Mateo listened to their pitch, chewing on a toothpick. When they finished, he stood up slowly. "You cannot own the ground," he said simply. "This root grows because the soil is free. If you fence it, if you put chemicals on it to make it grow faster, it will lose its power." The businessman tried to argue, showing him contracts. Mateo tore the contract in half. "My heart is strong because I am free," he told them. "Money brings stress. Stress brings death. I am 91 now. I have no use for your paper." He sent them away. It was a victory of wisdom over greed. Sarah heard about the incident through Angel. She was relieved. She realized that you couldn't pillify Mateo's life. You couldn't bottle the essence of a Filipino barrio life, the fresh air, the hard work, the laughter, the simple, nutrient-dense food. It had to be lived. She decided to visit the Philippines herself. She took a leave of absence from the hospital and flew to Manila, then took the long bus ride north to Nueva Ecija. She needed to see the source. When she arrived at the village, it was humble. Dirt roads, chickens running free, simple houses. But the people were vibrant. She saw old men and women, 80 and 90 years old, tending to their gardens, bending and squatting with ease. It wasn't just Mateo. It was a blue zone that the world had ignored. Sarah found Mateo's house. He was in the garden, harvesting the very leaves that had saved Mr. Henderson. When he saw her, his face lit up. "Doctora," he shouted. "You look different." "I've been eating the soup." "Mateo," Sarah laughed, hugging him. She spent 2 weeks in the village. She learned how to identify the correct Saluyot leaves. She learned how to dig for the turmeric. She learned that they didn't measure food in calories, but in colors and freshness. She realized that the secret diet wasn't a secret at all. It was the way humans were meant to eat before industry took over. It was tunghai, vegetables from the sea and land, untouched by factories. One evening, sitting around a fire with Mateo's family, eating the warm broth with rice, Sarah felt a peace she had never known in her high-rise condo. She looked at Mateo. "You know," she said, "the world is looking for a magic pill. They want to live forever." Mateo shook his head. "To live forever is a curse," he said. "To live well, that is a blessing. The heart beats as long as it has a reason to beat." He pointed to his great-grandchildren playing neighbor. "That is the reason. The food just gives me the strength to watch them." Sarah returned to the U.S. changed. She didn't quit her job, but she changed how she practiced medicine. She started prescribing market walks instead of just pills. She started a community garden program at the hospital for heart patients. She taught them how to cook sinigang with real tamarind and plenty of water spinach. Her success rate skyrocketed. The Mateo Protocol, as she privately called it, saved more lives than any surgery she had ever performed. The legend of the Filipino Lolo with a 20-year-old heart became a quiet myth in the medical halls of Seattle. Some didn't believe it really happened. But in Sarah's office, framed on the wall, with the EKG strip from that day, the perfect, rhythmic line of a 90-year-old heart that beat time, and next to it, a small dry branch of a malunggay tree. A reminder that sometimes the most advanced technology in the world is a leaf, a root, and a simple life lived well.